This video introduces Native Numbers, a complete early math curriculum that can be found in the iPad App Store. Let's start by taking a look at how children learn math. Now, this standard sequence of math learning probably looks familiar. Kids show up in kindergarten and start learning arithmetic, from addition and subtraction, moving up to multiplication and division. Once they've mastered their operations, they can go on to more complex topics, advancing eventually into algebra, trigonometry, and then calculus. Each of these topics builds a foundation which is critical for learning the topics that come after it. If a child hasn't mastered arithmetic, they'll have serious trouble grappling with algebra or trigonometry. And likewise, if an older child is struggling with trigonometry or calculus, it may actually be a deficit in a lower level skill that is holding them back. Getting these foundations in the right order and to the right depth of understanding is absolutely critical if a child is going to succeed in math. But there's an even more basic foundation of skills a child must learn before they start tackling arithmetic. A child must recognize and understand numbers and their standard numeric 1, 2, 3 representation. More importantly, a child must also understand that numbers represent quantity, and those quantities mean something in relation to each other. They should be able to arrange sets of numbers in order, they should be able to count up and down to demonstrate ordinality, and they should be able to count to determine how many items are in a set to demonstrate cardinality. All of these skills together represent something called number sense, and if a child doesn't have it, they will have a very hard time learning more advanced math skills to any meaningful level of understanding. Now, the good news is that number sense is a well-defined set of skills that can be taught to any child, and according to research, the better news is that interventions designed to facilitate math learning for kids aged 3 to 5 have a strong positive effect on these kids, not just in kindergarten, but for many years after that. Also, there is wide agreement across experts on what number sense is. According to the Common Core standards for mathematics in kindergarten, instructional time should focus on two critical areas. 1, representing, relating, and operating on whole numbers, and 2, describing shapes in space. But here's the key. More learning time in kindergarten should be devoted to number than to other topics. Beyond the Common Core, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics has put together guidelines for grades pre-K to 2 across 5 key areas. Concepts, connecting number words and numerals to the quantities they represent. Relations, developing a sense of whole numbers and their relations across representations. Ordering, understanding relative position and magnitude of whole numbers. Counting, understanding ordinal and cardinal numbers and their connections. And finally, being able to count with understanding and being able to recognize how many in sets of objects. So if we have a clear understanding of what number sense is, and there's widespread agreement that it's one of the most critical topics a child will ever learn, why do so many kids struggle with it? Why do some kids have trouble understanding at age 6 what other kids learned at age 3? And why is there such an inconsistent level of number sense understanding, even among kids who have been exposed to math in preschool or at home prior to arriving at kindergarten? Well, the challenge is that number sense simply does not develop by accident. A child may recognize numbers by sound and symbol, but that alone is not number sense. A child may know rote counting, but that isn't number sense either. A child may have memorized a bunch of math facts, but without a context for how to understand them, that does not constitute number sense. A child may have experienced the hours of fun and learning promised by the countless math apps in the App Store, but may not have acquired any number sense during the process. A child may have been exposed to puzzles or blocks or games or songs that have a math theme, but that won't lead to number sense either. All of these activities may look like math, but remember, number sense doesn't develop by accident. In fact, people often believe they are doing mathematics when they provide children with puzzles, blocks, songs, or games, but evidence suggests that such an approach is ineffective, owing to a lack of explicit attention to mathematical concepts and procedures, along with a lack of intentionality to engage in mathematical practices. The bottom line is that if you are not explicitly and intentionally teaching number sense, a child is unlikely to be learning any number sense at all. So how can we intentionally teach number sense? Let's talk about Native Numbers. Native Numbers was built to develop a deep understanding of number sense in children. It uses a mastery-based curriculum. Each activity is carefully planned to build on the one that precedes it, and a child needs to demonstrate that they understand prerequisite concepts before moving on to more advanced activities that depend on them. It adapts to the individual needs of each child. If a child breezes through parts of the material, the app will quickly level up. If a child needs more time, the app will patiently deliver more instruction until the child is ready to advance. If a child is struggling, the app will level down until the child is able to engage, then level the child back up as they learn. Native Numbers breaks down number sense into 5 sub-skills, which you should recognize from the Common Core and NCTM guidelines mentioned earlier. It starts with number concepts, which introduces the idea of number as a quantity and helps the child learn that numbers are the same even in different representations. Each sub-skill ends in a capstone mastery activity, which helps the child integrate all activities together into a cohesive understanding. The second sub-skill is number relations, where a child learns larger and smaller, heavier and lighter, advancing up to relations among numbers in different representations. Next comes number ordering, where the child learns how to arrange numbers in sequences from small to large and large to small, starting with rods and sets, and advancing once again to mixed representations. The fourth sub-skill is counting, which has far more complexity and nuance than most of us appreciate as adults who take the skill for granted. Kids learn one-to-one correspondence of numbers to items, followed by counting up, counting down, and counting on, and ending with the ability to count out a given number of items. The fifth and final sub-skill is called Demonstrate Mastery. These activities are the number sense black belt test. They give kids a chance to consolidate and integrate everything they've learned up to this point, and to extend these skills to novel challenges to help support knowledge transfer, to demonstrate that they've truly mastered the concepts at a fundamental level. In all, the child progresses through 25 carefully designed activities across these 5 sub-skills. Now, the app experience itself is quite simple. We've stripped out all of the over-the-top special effects, extended cutscenes, and other distractions that come standard in most children's apps, and instead built an experience from the ground up that is simple to engage and is based on intrinsic motivation. When a child first enters the app, all but the first activity is locked, because this is not a random collection of games or activities, but a carefully sequenced curriculum where knowledge builds. The app issues a simple instruction, like Touch 3, and over the course of simple tasks like this, the child learns which verbal number ties to each visual representation, or rod. If a child misses the instruction, they can hear it again without penalty. As they progress through the activity, they level up from 0 to 5 stars, first based on accuracy up to 4 stars, and finally based on speed as they tackle the 5th or mastery star. Meanwhile, as they go through these tasks and level up, they are learning the foundational concept of numbers as quantity. After they complete rods, they advance through each of the other activities within number concepts, working their way up to the mastery activity. By the time they get to the mastery activity for the sub-skill, they've learned to not only recognize numbers across different representations, but also that these numbers can all represent the same underlying quantity. Later, they advance into ordering, and they learn how to order numbers, not just by visually comparing size, but by truly understanding how these numbers can be sequenced by their underlying quantity. In this particular activity, a child must choose a number represented in one representation, or sets of animals in this case, to complete a sequence of numbers in a completely different representation, in this case rods. The challenge is that they have to do the translation in their minds in order to drag the correct object to its correct place in the sequence, certainly an activity that requires understanding to complete. Finally, the child advances into counting, which has a lot of complexity and nuance, with many milestones along the way. For example, the child learns counting to tell how many, as well as how to count out a specific number, which is a different kind of challenge. The entire Native Numbers app includes 25 activities in total, and is designed to keep kids engaged across literally thousands of individual tasks and hours of deep learning. Native Numbers is the first and only comprehensive number sense curriculum in the App Store, and with the proper foundation in number sense, every child can confidently advance and succeed in math. We are truly excited to join you and your child on their journey into math, and we look forward to hearing about your child's experience with the app.